It's a principle that most people nod at when they hear it, but very few live by it because it's difficult. The temptation to talk about what you're doing is almost irresistible. You want to share your plans, tell your friends about the big moves you're making, post it online so that people know you're not stagnant. You want others to see that you're becoming something. But here's the problem. When you keep telling the world what you're working on, you're giving away a form of energy that you should be storing. You're taking momentum from the future and spending it in the present. And the worst part, you're doing it for applause you don't actually need. Growth, real growth, doesn't need witnesses. It's not a performance. It's not something that needs validation from people who aren't walking your path. If anything, it thrives in the quiet. Think about how seeds grow not on a stage, not under the spotlight, but buried in darkness, surrounded by soil. The most important changes in your life happen the same way. Hidden internal, protected from the wind and noise. You work on yourself in silence because silence is the greenhouse of transformation. And yet, we live in a culture that rewards noise. The louder you are, the more attention you get. The more attention you get, the more you feel like you're achieving something. But attention isn't achievement. The appearance of progress isn't progress. There's a psychological trap here. When you tell people your plans, your brain gets a little dopamine hit as if you've already done something important. You feel satisfied just from announcing it. And that satisfaction can kill the hunger that would have driven you to actually finish it. This is why your self-work has to be your private discipline. You're not doing it to impress anyone, and you're certainly not doing it to prove something to the critics in your life. You're doing it because you understand that the greatest credibility comes not from argument, but from evidence. And the only evidence worth anything is results, not promises, not declarations, results. There's another layer to this. Silence, when paired with action, creates a certain kind of respect, sometimes even fear in people. It's not fear in a negative sense, but in the sense that they know you're not wasting your time trying to be understood. You're building something, and they can sense it, even if they don't know exactly what it is. And that mystery, that space you create by not explaining yourself, often works in your favor. But this doesn't mean isolation. Silence doesn't mean you cut off everyone and live in a cave. It means you become selective. You share your process with those who are genuinely invested in your growth, those who can handle your vulnerability without using it against you. For everyone else, they can see the finished product when it's ready. In my own life, and in the lives of people I've worked with, I've noticed that those who develop quietly often outpace those who announce loudly. The ones who keep their heads down, focus on their craft, and invest their time in mastering fundamentals. They emerge years later as a force to be reckoned with. They didn't win because they were louder. They won because they were consistent. There's also a deeper psychological benefit to keeping your self-work private. It strengthens your internal locus of control. You stop depending on the world to affirm your progress. You stop giving strangers the power to dictate your sense of worth. And when you no longer need to be seen to feel valuable, you become unshakable. People can doubt you, ignore you, even mock you, and it won't matter because you're not building for them. You're building for yourself, for your family, for the vision you have of the person you could be if you stayed disciplined. And that's another point. Discipline loves silence. Noise pulls your attention outward, silence pulls it inward. If you want to go deep into your work, whether it's a skill, a business, your fitness, your character, you need depth. And depth doesn't happen when you're constantly broadcasting every step to the world. You need the mental space to think, to reflect, to adapt without 1,000 opinions interrupting the process. There's an old saying, a tiger doesn't proclaim its tegritude, it pounces. The idea is that true capability reveals itself through action, not self-description. You don't need to explain that you're strong, show it. You don't need to declare that you're changing. Let people notice when the change is undeniable. When you operate like this, you shift from trying to persuade people to simply becoming undeniable. And once you're undeniable, you don't need to talk. Now, that doesn't mean you'll never be tempted to speak. You will. There will be days when you want to break the silence just to feel that hit of validation. But if you can push through that impulse, something powerful happens. You learn to be satisfied by the work itself. You find pride in the hours nobody saw, in the effort that went unrecognized, in the sacrifices that will never be fully understood by anyone but you. And that's the point. Self-respect built in silence is the most stable form of self-respect you'll ever have. One of the hardest truths to accept is that not everyone wants you to win. Some people, maybe even people you care about, will feel threatened by your growth. They'll look for ways to pull you back into the comfort zone you used to share. And here's where silence becomes protection. The less they know, the less they can interfere, the less they can discourage, the less they can plant seeds of doubt. When you decide to focus on yourself and stay silent, you're making a declaration not to the world, but to yourself, that your time, your energy, and your dreams are worth guarding. You're saying, I don't need to be seen to know I'm valuable. I don't need to be understood to know I'm on the right path. That kind of inner conviction is rare, but it's what separates those who talk about change from those who actually change. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. Are you building for applause or are you building for impact? Because the two are rarely the same. Applause fades quickly. Impact endures. And the work that creates impact is almost always done away from the spotlight, in rooms where no one is clapping, in hours where no one is watching. That's where you shape yourself into something worth noticing. Remember this: when you are truly focused on building yourself, you won't have the time or the need to convince others that you're doing it. The proof will be in the results, and the results will speak far louder than any words you could ever say. And if you want those results to be undeniable, learn to embrace the silence. It is not emptiness. It is the forge where you're being shaped. When the work is real, you don't need to shout. You just need to finish. Most people think of silence as passive. They think it's what happens when you've got nothing to say, or when you've been shut down. But that's a shallow understanding. The truth is silence, when chosen deliberately, is one of the most active, potent tools you have for navigating the world. It's a decision not to waste your energy in arenas where your words will either be misunderstood, weaponized, or ignored. It's the conscious act of preserving your momentum rather than scattering it. We live in a time where the default response to almost everything is to speak immediately, post instantly, react impulsively. The faster you can voice your opinion, the more relevant you feel. But this rush to speak is exactly what makes most voices forgettable. It's also what drains people of the very leverage they need to succeed. If you share too much too soon, whether it's a goal, a plan, or even an emotion, you open the door for premature judgment. And once other people's perspectives get into your head, they can alter the way you move forward, sometimes without you even realizing it. Strategic silence is about control. It's about controlling the flow of information around your life, so that what you're building is not prematurely exposed to forces that could distort it. If you're working on something meaningful, a business, a transformation in your health, a skill you're mastering, understand that the early stages are fragile. They're like a fire just starting to catch. The wrong kind of wind can blow it out before it has the strength to burn on its own. Now, some will say, but isn't it good to be transparent? Doesn't openness invite support? And yes, there's a time for openness. But openness without discernment is vulnerability without strategy. You don't need everyone's support. You need the right support from the right people at the right time. And until you've identified those people, it's better to let your work develop quietly. There's also an element of power in not revealing everything. People become curious when they sense something is happening, but they can't quite name it. That curiosity works in your favor. It keeps them watching, wondering, paying attention. And attention is more potent when it's drawn by intrigue rather than by noise. Noise fades, intrigue lingers. The silence also forces you to engage in deeper thinking. When you resist the urge to speak, you give yourself space to observe. Observation is underrated. You learn far more by watching than by constantly asserting your perspective. You notice patterns, motives, and opportunities that would have been invisible if you were too busy talking. And those observations give you a strategic edge. Because while others are revealing their thoughts and intentions openly, you're gathering data, adjusting, and preparing your moves without interference. There's another reason silence is a form of power. It disarms people who expect a reaction. Some people in your life may try to provoke you, not because they care about your view, but because they want to pull you into an emotional state where you lose control. The more reactive you are, the easier you are to manipulate. Strategic silence denies them that control. It communicates without words. You don't get to dictate my state of mind. That in itself commands respect. But I'm not talking about the kind of silence that comes from fear. I'm not suggesting you withhold your voice because you feel small or powerless. That's not strategy. That's avoidance. Strategic silence is different. It's a deliberate choice rooted in strength. You could speak, you choose not to, because you understand timing, context, and consequence. And here's something crucial: silence is not permanent. It's a pause. It's the gathering of strength before the right moment to speak or act. There will be times when breaking the silence will have maximum impact, when your words will land with undeniable weight because they were preceded by discipline and restraint. That's the paradox. Silence makes your words more powerful when you finally use them. Think about leaders, thinkers, or even friends in your life whose words carry weight. Chances are they're not the ones talking all the time. They're the ones who listen, who measure, who wait. When they do speak, you lean in, because you know it's not going to be empty noise. They've trained you to expect that their words have been considered, sharpened, distilled. And in your own life, you can cultivate that same kind of presence. The less you speak unnecessarily, the more weight your words carry. People will begin to notice that when you do say something, it matters. That shift alone can change how others treat you, because they'll sense you're not desperate to be heard. And paradoxically, that makes them more eager to hear you. Strategic silence also protects your energy. Every conversation, every argument, every debate you enter requires energy. If you spend it carelessly, trying to defend yourself to people who have no intention of understanding you or proving your worth to those who've already decided against you, you're robbing yourself of the focus you need for your real work. Silence is a filter. It ensures that your energy is invested where it can create change, not where it will be wasted. And make no mistake, in a world addicted to constant communication, silence is noticeable. It breaks the pattern. People are so used to immediate feedback that when they don't get it, they start to question themselves. That alone can shift dynamics in your favor. In negotiations, in relationships, in conflict, sometimes the most powerful move is simply not to fill the air. But perhaps the greatest value of strategic silence is this: it keeps you rooted in action over performance. It forces you to measure your progress, not by how many people know about it, but by how real it is in your own life. When you don't have the outlet of telling everyone what you're doing, the only way to get that feeling of accomplishment is to actually do the thing. It keeps you honest. Silence is not weakness. It's a form of mastery over yourself. It's knowing that you are not obligated to announce every step you take, nor to justify every choice you make. It's understanding that the most important conversations you have are with yourself, in the quiet, where no one else can interfere. And when you truly grasp that, you stop fearing that people will misunderstand you. You stop feeling the need to set the record straight every time someone misjudges you. Because you know that in time, the truth will show itself, not through your explanations, but through the undeniable evidence of your results. That's the discipline. To keep moving, keep building, keep becoming, without the constant need to narrate it. to let the silence hold your momentum until the right moment comes to reveal it. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can say is nothing at all. If there's one thing that silently erodes people's progress more than anything else, it's comparison. The constant scanning of what others are doing, how fast they're moving, and how far ahead they seem to be. It's poison disguised as information. You look at someone else's life, what they've built, what they've achieved, and without even meaning to, you begin to measure your own life against it. But here's the problems. You're comparing the middle of your journey to someone else's highlight reel, and that will always leave you feeling behind. When you're constantly checking the scoreboard of other people's lives, you stop playing your own game. Your energy shifts from creating to competing, from growing to proving. And the tragedy is that you can win that competition and still lose your life. You can beat someone else's score and realize you were never even supposed to be playing their game in the first place. Your path is not a mass-produced template. It's a unique construction. The combination of your experiences, your values, your temperament, your skills, your wounds, and your dreams is one of one. There's never been a person with exactly your configuration, and there never will be again. That means there's no accurate way to compare your journey to anyone else's. Even if they're in the same field, chasing the same goal, the context of their life makes their path fundamentally different from yours. And here's where silence from the earlier points connects to this. When you're focused on your lane, you naturally quiet the noise of comparison. You stop broadcasting your progress just to keep pace with the world. You start measuring yourself against one thing, who you were yesterday. That's the only scoreboard worth watching. Did you grow? Did you learn? Did you keep your promises to yourself? If the answer is yes, you're winning, even if no one else can see it yet. But this is where people stumble. They think focusing on themselves means ignoring everyone else completely, like the rest of the world doesn't exist. That's not it. You can still observe others, learn from them, be inspired by them. The danger is when inspiration turns into imitation, or when learning turns into envy. The line is thin, and you cross it the moment you stop asking, "What can I take from this?" and start asking, "Why am I not there yet?" The truth is, timing is one of the most misunderstood forces in life. People think success is just about hard work, but timing plays a massive role, and your timing is not going to match anyone else's. Some people's seasons of growth come early, others come later. That doesn't make one more valuable than the other. In fact, the slower season often produces deeper roots. The oak tree takes longer to grow than the weed, but it also stands for centuries. When you accept that your path is yours, you stop rushing to catch up to people who aren't even headed to the same destination. You realize that your obstacles aren't proof you're failing. They're part of your curriculum. You're being shaped by challenges that were designed for you, not for the person you're watching online or working next to. And if you abandon your path to chase theirs, you abandon the very lessons that would have made you the person capable of carrying your vision to completion. There's also a kind of peace that comes from owning your lane. You stop over-explaining yourself to people who don't understand what you're doing. You stop needing them to see the logic in your decisions, because you realize they're not meant to. They don't have your map. They don't know the terrain you're crossing. And frankly, they don't need to. Your responsibility is not to make your path look sensible to spectators. Your responsibility is to walk it with integrity. I've seen this play out over and over in life and in work. People who try to chase too many paths end up scattered. They burn out chasing momentum that doesn't belong to them. But those who commit to their own process, who are willing to walk in obscurity, to endure the long seasons where nothing looks like it's working, those are the ones who eventually arrive somewhere worth arriving at. And when they get there, it's not by accident. It's because they refuse to be pulled off course by the illusion that someone else's progress was more important than their own. This is where focusing on yourself becomes more than a productivity tip. It becomes a moral discipline. Because when you live in comparison, you breed resentment. And resentment will rot you from the inside out. It will make you bitter instead of better. But when you choose to focus inward, you turn that energy into responsibility. You start asking, what can I do with what I have? Instead of, why don't I have what they have? The irony is, when you really commit to your own path, people eventually notice anyway. They see the changes in you. They see the results stacking up. And often, they come to you for guidance, not because you chased them, but because you stayed put and built something solid. Your very commitment becomes magnetic. But you can't build that if you're constantly drifting into someone else's story. You have to plant yourself in your own. That means saying no more often. No to distractions. No to unnecessary comparisons. No to people who are running in a direction you don't actually want to go, but whose pace tempts you anyway. That's discipline. And it's not glamorous in the moment. It feels slow, quiet, sometimes lonely. But the long-term payoff is freedom. You don't want to spend your life living out someone else's definition of success, only to wake up one day and realize you never pursued your own. That's the great tragedy for too many people. They win the wrong race. And all the while, the race they were meant to run was waiting for them, untouched, unexplored, because they were too busy chasing the wrong finish line. So here's the reality: your path is going to have stretches that no one applauds, no one understands, and no one follows you on. That's not a sign you're lost. That's a sign you're in territory that belongs uniquely to you. The more comfortable you can get with that, the stronger you'll become. And the stronger you become, the less you'll care who's ahead, behind, or watching from the sidelines. Because in the end, the only competition that matters is the one between who you are now and who you could be if you stayed fully committed to the work in front of you. And if you can win that battle, you've already won everything that counts. The race isn't about being first. It's about finishing the course you were given with your integrity intact and your purpose fulfilled.